So, this is the descriptions of the various factions of beliefs, and also a detailed look into what cosmos means. Cosmos means order. The question of faith is a fundamental orientation. In its fundamental orientation, has become a complicated philosophical point of view in our world. There's theism, monism, dualism, deism, nihilism, pantheism, atheism, etc. I'll explain the matter very simply. There are people who believe God, and there are people who don't believe in God. Those people whose souls have not yet developed to the point where they are aware of a divine origin, or at least suspect it, are called atheists. An atheist usually rejects the existence of an immortal soul, let alone the fact that he himself is that soul. Now let's look at the other group, those who believe in God. And there is where it gets very interesting, because this group is divided into two camps. On the one hand, it is divided into those who believe in a personal God, the theists, and on the other hand, into those who believe in an impersonal God, the pantheists. And that's important. Admittedly, it may be easier for some to imagine at the moment that there is no personal God, and therefore everything is just an eternal, constantly changing form of energy that has consciousness and that produces us souls. That's exactly how pantheism thinks. Everything is just energy, which strangely has consciousness because it produces conscious living beings. Whether the pantheist's assumption corresponds to the truth, or whether a personal, all-encompassing God actually exists, or whether things are perhaps completely different with what they call God, what we call God, will become very clear as this work continues. Looking at all of existence, what do you estimate which group is the majority, the theists or the pantheists? You will most likely answer, well, it's the theists, of course, because if you look around our world, you will find that, with the exceptions of Buddhism, all major religions worship a personal god. Some religions, such as Hinduism, even worship several gods, but always in person. Who is currently so clearly predominantly theistic on Earth looks very different from a universal perspective. Theists and pantheists are, universally speaking, always in balance. Again, this comes back to this yin and yang principle, the balance, yeah? This has to be the case, otherwise our universe would not function, because we live in a duality, and duality always requires a balance of opposites, even if the individual weights are not always directly visible and also expressed their potential at a different time. Now, some bright readers might say, seen from a dual perspective, the opposite of theists are the atheists and not the pantheists. But that's not true, because atheists are people whose earthly awareness is that they have a soul is currently still sleeping. In reality, all atheists already belong to one of the two groups. If a soul of an atheist awakens in a specific earthly incarnation at a specific time, then their belonging to this world automatically comes to light. To put it bluntly, pantheists know that they are immortal. This is important, because we know who the pantheists are if we read further. And we know, yeah, it comes to light in a minute. And they know that there is a universal hierarchy in their circles, at the top of which are the enlightened ones, who call themselves the Illuminates. Pantheists consider themselves to be the ultimate highest thing there is. They do not recognize a personal God who is above them. If someone believes that they are the highest thing that exists, then they can practically do whatever they want according to their belief. There is no authority above them. And that is exactly what the Illuminati practice and live according to the motto, the end justifies all means. We are God. And this is, I have a friend who's arguing with me constantly because she won't look at what I'm sharing. It's quite bizarre. And we're coming from the same point of view, but she just hasn't got the ears to hear. Not there. The Vedas provide exhaustive information on this topic, because the Vedas come from the one that the pantheists do not know exist, from God. As you will soon see, the pantheists are the dark powers in the universe. In the Vedas they are called the Asuras, because this gives answers to all your questions. You get your answers. As far as their presentation is concerned, the Vedic scriptures are often provided with illustrations. The depictions are extremely colorful and always seem somehow fairy tale-like, playful and sometimes utopian. There are the most fantastic gods and worlds. The whole thing seems incredibly crazy and otherworldly, especially to us Western-orientated contemporaries. But believe me, the writings, despite or perhaps because of the colorful, crazy presentation, describe nothing other than our reality. Our universe contains worlds and life that you could never imagine in your wildest dreams. Well, we have people who are plugging into these other worlds, into these other dimensions when they have out-of-body experiences, and they drift into the higher dimensions, which are just reflections. Remember, we're in this hologram. They are just reflections of our world. They are actually at a higher vibration, and he will argue, and you will agree with them following his argument, that actually in those worlds it's even harder to discover and wake up because everything is so perfect. So you'll never start asking the really pertinent questions, the question of why, what is going on. This is only possible in our world, this question of what is going on, why am I here, who am I? And he argues the points very succinctly. That's no wonder, because we are trapped in our grey everyday lives, and unfortunately current thinking, current knowledge is nothing other than what our material senses and ultimately the media tell us day after day. When it comes to and we know with our technical abilities that we are only perceiving a small slither of what's real, right? Because we're bound by our five senses and by our instruments which can pick up only a slither of what's real. When it comes to cosmic connection and therefore real knowledge, early cultures were vastly superior to our today strictly material-orientated civilization, and their myths and stories were full of distant worlds, demigods, and fantastic-looking creatures. And don't think that these cultures were all stupid or naive. Unfortunately, we represent the sad pinnacle of all human development. As you progress, you will get to know the structure of our universe more closely, which will improve your horizons and maybe expand acceptance a little bit. In the Vedic scriptures, God is often referred to by the name of Krishna. Among many other names, God himself says in the Vedas that he has countless names. Krishna means the all-attracting, and God is very aptly named in his name, his main name. Another name of God that appears frequently in the Vedic scriptures is Rama. This name means something like source of all joy. Some representatives of fair femininity are always upset about the fact that God is always portrayed as male, and that this is pure macho behavior because God could just as easily be a woman. As far as the creation in which we currently exist is concerned, I must first bitterly disappoint the lovely feminine. Creating something is always the responsibility of the male principle, and a creator is male, but everything created is of no use at all and would not have the slightest existence if it was not for the nourishing element, and the nourishing element is always the responsibility of the female principle. A little later I will inform you about how God lives in his kingdom, because the Vedas also provide enough information about this, and in the course of this the woman will also find out that she actually has him under her spell too, and everything should be fine again. Because I'll show you the structure of our universe, it is essential to know the 8 fundamental properties of our universe. The universe is a cosmos and is subject to duality. Cosmos comes from the Greek and means order. The opposite of cosmos is chaos, disorder. So there's strict order in the universe. Everything is regulated down to the last detail. Everything runs precisely like clockwork, and there's no coincidence. even if it often looks different from an earthly perspective. The fact that we live in a duality probably doesn't need to be explained in more detail, because everyone knows that we are confronted with good and evil, light and dark, micro and macro, above and below, hot and cold on a daily basis. A thing can only exist in matter if it has a corresponding opposite pole. The law of correspondence, right? The Hermetic principles. The universe is multidimensional. This fact is of enormous importance. If you want to understand the processes that take place in the universe, dimensions are worlds of their own. With planets, suns, the whole thing has something to do with vibration. They exist in parallel to our world in a different vibration that we can't currently pick up, other than astral travel, which is what people are doing now. When our scientists explore, and which is the ancient had this capability, which is why they knew about those worlds. When our scientists explore the universe, they can only explore and partially experience our vibrational dimension, but never the higher vibrational dimensions. Higher vibrating dimensions are far more real worlds than ours, which I already explained to you in details in the previous chapter. Higher vibrating dimensions can influence lower vibrating dimensions. Influence in the opposite direction is not possible. There are a total of 7 dimensions vibration levels, but these 7 vibration levels are present in duplicate, so that in the end there are 14 dimensions. 7 vibration levels lead to light, and 7 vibration levels lead to darkness. Everything takes place in the same room, just as different radio stations can use the same space and not touch or interfere with one another. The same is true with the 14 dimensions in the universe. And astral travelers can tell you about this, because they're coming back with these experiences. Everything that exists multidimensionally is just a matter of vibration, force, and energy. You have to put aside your narrow-mindedness and small-mindedness, otherwise your mind will be at a loss when it comes to understanding and accepting multidimensional processes. Forget all the laws of physics that are written in our textbooks, because these laws are merely formal crutches and do not apply to the entire universe. This fact is and was very well known by many top physicists, as I just stated in the last video where I shared with you the quotes by physicists. Rejecting the fact that the universe is multidimensional is scientifically, empirically short-sightedness or philosophically small-mindedness. The universe is entirely material and therefore finite, mortal. The higher spheres in the universe, which are called heavens, also have a material structure. This is important. Matter is always bound in time and space. That's also important. But time varies from vibration level to vibration level. The higher a vibration level vibrates, the more subtle the matter becomes, the more intensely reality is felt. This is also important, because there's this argument that here is the one. And when you have near-death experiences and they go into their near-death experience and they come back saying, I felt more real than on earth. Aha. Yeah? The lower a vibration level oscillates, the coarser the matter becomes. The coarser reality is perceived, and the faster time passes. They also say time is a different matter altogether when they experience this in-between state, when they leave the body. So time is not the same as time, and what's more, it always depends on how a living being perceives times. The example in chapter 2 with the various finely woven tapestries which have a different number of experience points with the same experience area depending on the frequency vibration also explains the different perception of time. Instead of an experience area, it has to be called a period of time. The law prevails in the universe, actio-reactio. You can also call it the law of cause and effect. So what you sow you will reap, or the law of karma. It is sometimes referred to as the law of balancing. No matter what you call it, the whole thing should actually be clear to everyone. It is only extremely important to know that said compensation does not take place within one life, but rather usually takes place over several lives, incarnations. Isn't the popular saying very apt? Well, if he punishes the little sins immediately, then it also means that it takes more time for big sins, sometimes a lot more time, and there's enough time. Buddha Siddhartha Gautama left our world a very apt piece of wisdom. God punishes small sins immediately. If you want to know who you are, see who you are. If you want to know who you will be, look at what you do. All processes in the universe are cyclical. Cyclical means constantly recurring. Suns and planets die, and suns and planets are born in the universe. The Earth dies and the Earth is born, and the whole thing runs precisely like clockwork. If I tell you now that our Earth will be destroyed and recreated 36,000 times over the course of the existence of our universe, then you might already have a faint idea of universal cycles and processes. The law of resonance prevails in the universe. This law states that like always attracts like. By the way, our common saying also knows this, because it says equal to equals likes to socialize. Some people will say, oh God, I know. The state that some people will say to you, opposites attract as well. That applies to our dimension and not to the rest of the universe. But there is also the saying, there's also the saying that opposites attract one another. I would like to say to you, that statement that opposites attract and that opposite attracts only applies to our dimension and is not the rest of the universe. Sorry for this. And secondly, the opposites in our dimensions do not actually attract each other, but are driven towards each other according to a plan, and you will see later in my explanation why. The universe is structured holographically. The property of a hologram is as follows. You are certainly familiar with the commercially available holographic images that are several millimeters thick. Let's assume that a holographic image depicts a dog. As far as the optical representation is concerned, this dog appears extremely three-dimensional and spatial in this hologram. Now, if you now break this picture into two parts, you will not see half a dog on each of the fragments, as would be the case with an ordinary picture, but rather, strangely enough, each of the two parts will show the whole dog again. However, the two dogs in the representation are no longer quite as beautiful as the one dog in the undivided state, and this is because the representation in the divided state has fewer details. Now you can divide each of the parts again, and you already have 4 parts. Each of the 4 parts show the whole dog, although in terms of detail resolution, it is a certain factor worse, and it goes on and on. In a hologram, every particle, no matter how... Hang on. In a hologram, every particle, no matter how small, contains the entire image. However, the smaller the particle, the less detail is shown. Of course, the whole thing also works in the opposite direction. The more individual particles with little detail in the representation are put back together, the more details the resulting image regains. A fantastic thing, isn't it? In general, it can be said a hologram makes it clear that the whole and the parts are closely connected. So our universe is also holographically structured. Our science is currently in the process of discovering this. Scientists have already proven that our brain also works holographically. It used to be assumed that what a person remembers was stored in a specific place in the brain. Today we know that every particle in the brain basically knows everything, but only in a very fuzzy manner with little detail. The sum of all brain particles brings the wealth of detail, and thus what is remembered with complete clarity. Every particle of matter in the universe, no matter how small, contains the entire knowledge of the universe. Our universe is essentially a gigantic living hologram. We humans are part of this image, only currently separated from the said whole for 4 specific reasons. The knowledge that a universe is structured holographically is of enormous importance, because this knowledge explains many things. The law applies in the universe as above, so as below, so above. The magician Hermes Trismegistus, whom I have already mentioned, communicated this law to people. In full, this law is as follows. Oh, God. Jesus, I wish that hadn't happened. Hang on. So I have to go to the original. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below. in order to fulfill the wonder works of the whole thing. This, he says, this is of great importance. However, this rule is not formulated correctly, because it should say not like, but alike or similar. That which is below is similar to that which is above, and that which is above is similar to what lies beneath. And there is a difference in between the words like and similar. There's a T at the end, which makes that distinction. You see, the difference lies in the two words equal and equals, so that it equals that which is above it. I've translated that actually better with the alike and like, because it's not the same. It's just similar within, for all the above reasons, by the way, of the different vibrations, the different states. Within the universe, i.e. in matter, this law represents the relationship between macrocosm and microcosm. This law is also called the law of analogy. The word analog means something like according to. So that which is below is according to, but it's not the same. It's diluted here. Do you understand? It's not perfect. When a person walks in the sunshine, their body casts a shadow. When this person raises his arm and waves, the shadow arm also waves. It is said that the shadow always reacts analogously to the body, but the shadow is not the same as the body. It merely resembles it. All processes that take place in the microcosm, i.e. on a small scale, also take place in the macrocosm, i.e. on a large scale. Regarding of whether you explore a cell with a microscope or explore space with a telescope, you will always come across the same things and processes, because everything is connected in an analog way. The law of analogy is based on the fact that the universe is a hologram. So again, you have these tiny particles which behave alike, similarly, but they are distorted, which is why that law doesn't function. It just functions not the same both ways, because the deeper you sink, the more distorted it becomes. Every tiny particle of a hologram always behaves analogously to the whole, as you already know. Since the law of analogy, as I've already indicated, is also directly applicable to God, I will always do so in my further explanations. However, blah blah blah, then you will know how to understand. Right. So he's now showing you the different words, right? Now that you're informed about the 8 most important properties of our universe, I will now show you the structure of the universe using a graphic based on Vedic knowledge. Actually, the graphic shows more than just the structure of our universe, because God's kingdom, which exists beyond all matter, is also shown. So here's God's external kingdom, non-material, non-dual, spiritual world, which exists separate from what we're in, because God has split that part of himself away from himself, right? So you have right. See if I can fit this best one. Whoops. No. Here's where God resides. Here's where we are. We're here. Sun, moon, earth. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 actually, because we're swapping, we're oscillating, we're going up and down and up and down and up and down. We're oscillating between these two other dimensions, right? So we have the Satya Loka, the Brahma Loka, the seventh light dimension, the subtlest, highest level of vibration, the Tapa Loka, the sixth light dimension, the Yano Loka, the fifth light dimension, the fourth light dimension, the third light dimension, the Purva Loka, the second light dimension, and the first light dimension. And then we have this grossest level, the lowest vibration that Earth currently sits on. Then we have the dark dimensions, okay? So we have going upwards here, divine light, bliss, love. Going downwards, artificial light, ego, vices, self-indulgence, technology. Guess what we're slipping into here, right? This makes it all perfectly clear what's going on. Because the Earth is making this movement. So then we have the dark dimension, number 1, number 2, they all have names. Does that make finally a getting light bulb moments? Also the fact that, you know, we've got the 7 seals here, the 7. Now you have to understand, when the Vedas explain these things with characters, with you know, when they personify this, they are giving you pictures to explain extremely complicated physical occurrences, and to make them plausible. The sun sits on a chariot, blah blah, right? It's just an allegorical form of explaining things that are happening, things that are observable. So I'm just going to show you to make it kind of visible what's happening here with us dropping into these darker dimensions or lighter dimensions. I'll just show you how they show the way the sun goes round and creates the various seasons, right? Because on a on a bigger level, this is how the yugas can be explained.
Durations of day and night. Ordinary vision sees the sun to be a mere globe of fire. However, celestial vision reveals a personality residing over the sun. His name is Vivasvan, and he rides on a golden chariot pulled by 7 divine horses at a speed of 16,000 miles per second. The chariot has one wheel which moves on celestial Manasotra mountain. The horizontal shaft is linked to the axial hub of the universe, Mount Meru, and the diagonal shaft is linked to the pole star. With each circular path, the wheel gradually moves laterally inward for 6 months and then outward for 6 months. Similar to the chariot's vertical motion, this lateral action fine-tunes seasonal changes on Earth.
Right? So, of course, the sun doesn't sit on a chariot. You know, it's just their way of explaining it. And in the same manner, we are creeping up and down, going into higher dimensions and slipping into lower dimensions. And I'll leave it here for now, because I need a break. I hope you find this as interesting as I found it, and as enlightening. I hope it comes to answer some of your questions, because this man has gone into detail and asked every possible question, has found an answer for every bloody problem that we've been wrangling with.